If you've been recently promoted to a new position, congratulations. You're probably feeling both excited and also quite humbled by the fact that you're now encountering a whole new set of tasks and responsibilities and facing a fairly steep learning curve. This episode is designed to help smooth that transition by offering some guidance on getting into the right mindset before you're taking even your very first actions, just helping to understand where you're thinking, where your head could be or should be in terms of getting to grips with dealing with your team, any former colleagues who you are now responsible for their work as opposed to being co-workers, and just make the transition from your former position to your new one as best as possible. There'll also be a follow-on video after this that's going to cover the very first steps that one would take, both in meeting the team and then getting to grips with your first actions in the role. It's quite natural on hearing the good news, you'll wish to celebrate. Do so with friends, family, enjoy the moment, savor it, and then tuck it away. Make sure that as far as your new team and the company is concerned, any of those flamboyant victory rolls only happen in your head, because now it is not about you. It is about the team, it's about the organization, it's about the task at hand, and these are going to be the priorities. There is nothing more unattractive than a braggart swaggering into a new position where they're going to lord it over their new underlings, as they would see it. This is the very worst possible start, and just having that time to take your celebratory measures and then putting that aside and getting down to the work is going to be the best way to deal with that one. Chances are you're also going to be very excited. You'll be enthused about the new role, the challenges it's going to bring, what you hope to achieve, and having that level of confidence and ambition about the future is going to be a huge boost to what you'll be able to do as a team leader. However, in the back of your mind, in terms of where your head is at, just be aware of the fact that you aren't going to be able to deliver very quickly on all the things that you would want to do. In the real world, it just doesn't happen that way. And there's a real danger that enthusiastic, particularly first-time managers, walk into a role where they imagine that now that they have the role power, they can get things done quickly. And then they'll run into the impetus of the machinery of the organization, the bureaucracy, budgetary constraints, reasons that they hadn't been aware of why some of these ideas had never been implemented in the past. It will take a lot of time and effort, much more than is often imagined, to get things done. And this can be a great source of disappointment if someone is walking into the new role and making too many promises to too many people too early about what can get fixed, what can get done, and what's going to happen and what's going to change straight away. So just please be aware to temper your enthusiasm with a bit of a reality check before making your first actions in the role. As a newly promoted person within your organization, your relationship with your former colleagues is now undergoing a very dynamic change. It is a fundamentally different scenario. You now have not only role power, you have responsibility. You are responsible for the work, the output, and so many other things that are related to your colleagues that never happened in the past. You will have access to information. You may have visibility on the earnings, for example, of people on the team that used to be your co-workers. And all of these will simply mean that you are no longer part of the gang as it would have been beforehand, and this can be a bit of a shock to the system. So knowing this up front just helps smooth things when you go into the role. Yes, of course, you want to have good relationships, but these are going to be a little bit more on the professional side of things as opposed to the friendships. Now, of course, if you had friends on the team beforehand, hopefully you will maintain those friendships, but within the work environment, it is a different status in the relationship. It just is, because it has to be because of the structure. And we'll go into some of the details on that in the following sections. One of the more challenging scenarios in this situation is when you and a colleague, or a couple of colleagues all went for the promotion and you got it and they didn't. And that can be a source of resentment, bit of trouble ahead perhaps. So in terms of where you're thinking before you're going to be going into your first meetings and have your one-on-ones or making your first actions, just be aware that there could be some sensitivities out there. And this is exactly why you need to be quite humble about your approach to the position. You need to be sensitive to the fact that they may well feel disappointed. Perhaps they felt, rightly or wrongly, that they were unfairly passed over, they'd been there longer, they had more qualifications. There could be any number of things in play where they would feel that they were expecting, counting on, owed that promotion that you got. So you just don't know until you get into the relationship and now whether you've got an adversarial situation on your hands or not. So in terms of approach, if you just bear in mind that, for one, this person is going to be an extremely valuable contributor to the team. They would not have been up for promotion perhaps if they were not. So they are not somebody that you need to get rid of or want to get rid of. You hopefully can keep them on your team. Two, this person, may just need some time to adjust to the situation, and that's fine. So you can't imagine that things are going to go smoothly right from the first start. Maybe they're extremely professional and it's great, but you can't count on that. You don't know till you see the situation. And also, as the new team leader, manager, you're responsible for the career progression, for the aspirations of your teammates. So if you are forgetting that, that's going to be a bit of a problem. You need to have, when the time is right, early on, an upfront conversation with the person who lost out on the promotion about what their ambitions are and how you can work together, and avoid focusing on yourself. Again, this is all about the organization. It's all about the team's contribution to the organization. It's all about the job at hand, the goals to be executed, the work to be done. And keeping the focus on that as opposed to the personalities is going to be the best way that you can mentally approach these tricky situations. Another thing to mentally prepare yourself for is that the lines of communication are now going to be a little bit different. As mentioned before, you as the new boss are no longer part of the gang in the same way that you once were. So all of the back channel communication and chat and gossip, rumor, all these things that may have been going on when you were a colleague, member of the team, aren't going to be shared with you anymore. Just think about it. You don't tell your boss everything. You wouldn't expect to. Your boss doesn't tell you everything. So why would you expect all your former teammates are suddenly going to continue to share the same information that they withheld from the previous boss with you? It's not going to happen. You're going to be out of that little loop. So what's the best way to think about countering that? Well, it's simply this. Acknowledge that these things will happen. It's quite natural. People need to blow off a little bit of steam down the sidelines, and you're not to be in that communications loop. But if you have good lines of communication, if you're actively engaged with all the members of your team, you're open, you're listening, you're encouraging people to come forward and give ideas, and people are being heard, then the necessity for some sort of back channel gossip and what have you that excludes you, that really tends to dissipate quite a lot. So again, just bearing in mind that this communication challenge is going to be one of your early things to tackle. And given that you've got some experience with, being on the team previously, you should have a good grounding as to how to tackle all the individual personalities and make sure that everyone is communicating well through the official lines. And finally, one of the most challenging mental shifts that many people find that they struggle with when they're promoted into a new role is the fact that in their previous role, they were on the top of their game. They were the expert. They had the technical knowledge. They were the top salesperson. They had all the talents and skills that put them to the highest level of their previous employment. And now moving into a management role, of course, it's an entirely new set of requirements, and they're often really badly prepared for that. And there is a strong temptation to want to do the old work yourself. There's a bit of a joke that management is all about watching people do a job, worse than you could have done it if you were still doing it. And there's a ring of truth in that. But it needs to be avoided. Your role now is more of the coordinator, the mentor, the person who is tying all the loose threads together to make sure that things happen, and not necessarily executing on all the little detail. If you get lost down in the weeds, you're going to lose your visibility on what is the overall picture. So that would be a fatal, fatal error. But it's so, so tempting because people like to do tasks that they are good at, that they feel confident in. And it's quite easy to go back into the mindset of executing on the specific technical or what have you facets of your old role that are within the parameters of the team that you're on now, as opposed to stepping back and let others do that work and mentor them and help them along the way. Totally different skill set, and it's a trap that a lot of people will fall into. So if you're mentally prepared for that, it's hopefully going to help you in that transition phase when things start to go a little bit sideways, as inevitably they will once you start to take over as team leader. In summary, welcome to your new role. Do savor the moment, enjoy the little victory dance in your mind, and then put that aside and roll up your sleeves and get down to grips with the very hard work and the steep learning curve that lies before you. It's going to take an entirely different perspective on work, your place within the team, how you can get things done through other people as opposed to yourself, and above all, taking a very humble approach to this new position. And if you get your head straight first before going in and taking your first actions, your first conversations, your first steps, then you will be the kind of manager that people will enjoy to be on the team with. You won't be the jerk. Don't be that guy.